Hello! Today we are going to make Spanakorizo, which is spinach and rice. It's a Greek dish. It's a great side dish, and it's a nice way to try having rice in a slightly different way. We start with 3 cloves of garlic, which we're going to chop very fine. 1 small onion, which we're also going to chop very fine. We're going to use about 2.5 cups of basmati rice or any other long grain rice that you'd like. And then you need the appropriate amount of liquid for however much rice you're using. In this case, it'll be 2 3/4 cups. I've got 1.5 pounds of leaf spinach. You can use chopped spinach. I'm basically going to chop this up. I like to use frozen spinach. You can use fresh spinach as well. You just slightly change how you cook that because there'll be more water in it. But really, you just reduce the water by maybe 1/3 cup that you're putting into it. We're going to have some olive oil, some salt, but not too much salt because we're going to top this with feta cheese, which is very salty. So we don't need a lot of salt overall, but we do need to make sure everything is seasoned. We're also going to finish it off with a little hint of lemon at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to do our prep. We're going to get our garlic pressed. If you haven't seen me use the garlic press, it's the fastest way to get garlic minced. It requires a little more work to clean up than just a knife and a cutting board, but I'll take that. This one's a big piece. We'll cut that one in half. I'll take that over trying to chop garlic. One of my least favorite things to do, but I love having garlic in my food, so there's always going to be garlic. Get the rest of that in here. Just use the end of the edge of the bowl, and I've got my garlic ready. So put that off to the side. All right. We're going to chop our spinach, so I'm just going to turn out all the spinach on my bowl. And we're just going to chop. We don't want long strands of this, but I also don't want it to be super minced. It's, again, a personal preference, so I'm cutting one way, turning it the other way. This is where you need to have a good sharp knife to make sure it goes through everything. So we'll get this next section. We're going to cut one way. And turn the whole thing 90 degrees and cut the other way. And there's still some moisture in this, and that's okay. It's not. We don't want it to be super dry. It's going to lend flavor to the finished product. Turn it again 90 degrees. Right into our bowl. All right, this will be our last 2. Like I said, if you're not comfortable chopping up your spinach, you can buy frozen chopped spinach. If you're using fresh spinach, those baby leaves, you don't need to chop those up. As you know, spinach kind of disappears when you cook it, when it's fresh. So just get all of this in our bowl. Here's our last one. You see, like some of these stems, you want to make sure that they have gotten cut up. There we go. And that's all just going to go in our bowl. Get that off our hand. And then the last thing we're going to do is cut up our onion. I've already peeled it. Make sure we get all the spinach off. There we go. All right, so we'll cut up our onion. And you want to dice your onion as fine as possible. if you're not comfortable doing this, you can use your food processor, but you know, even if it becomes a paste, it's no big deal. It's the flavor we're after here with the garlic, with the onion, but you don't want massive pieces of onion in here. All right, I'm going to leave that on my board. Just going to move it off to the side. We're going to do this one as well. But you see, I'm not worried about the fact there's a little bit of spinach on it. It's all going to go in the same pot. Speaking of pots, we're going to get our pot heated so that we can start this process, because we're ready to go. Just move this off to the side. And there we go. We've got all three of our ingredients that needed to be cut up ready to go. All right, so we've turned the heat up to about medium. We have our nice deep pan. We're going to put about 2 tablespoons of olive oil here at the bottom, and we're going to saute our onions just until they're a bit translucent. We don't want this to get too hot, but this pan heats up very quickly. So we'll get that in there. We don't want anything to go to waste. All right, so we'll give our onions a couple of moments here. Spread them out so that they are all over the pan. You can hear that sizzle. That's what we want. And then we're going to add our garlic. All right. So the majority of the work that you do for this is all up front. When you make any kind of pilaf, in this case happens to be a spinach pilaf, the active time really is minimal compared to the cooking time, because we don't actually cook it for very long. We let the passive heat do the work. So I'm going to stir my onions just a little bit here, because as we know, the top part of your pan is always the hottest part, so we want to give all of the ingredients a chance to pass by that. And it takes just a few minutes for the onions, depending on your stovetop. I am actually going to go ahead and add my garlic, because this has gotten nice and hot, and I'm going to continue cooking this when I add in my rice as well. So garlic burns very quickly, so I make sure it's on top of the rice when I add it. Excuse me, in this case, on top of the onions when I add it. I'm not going to stir where the garlic is just yet. But here's the next thing you're going to do. We're going to add in all of the rice, and we're going to make sure that it gets coated by the oil that's in the pan. And if I realize that I may not have enough oil, I may add a little bit more oil, but it should be more than enough. So I'm going to mix this so that the garlic comes in contact with the pan itself, and I can already smell it. So I'm going to waste no time, and I'm going to add in all my rice. And now you want to stir until your rice gets coated, and you'll see it looks dry, and then it starts to look slick. Can you see that? Can you see that some of the grains are looking dry? Like this one right here looks a little dry, but the one above it is slick with oil. That's what we want. Okay. Now I'm going to add my salt. It's about a teaspoon of salt, maybe a little bit more. Do that by eye. I make rice all the time, so I do that by eye. Give that a moment. And what I'm doing now is letting the rice toast just a bit. You'll smell like a very slight nuttiness. You don't want it to burn. You're not making paella. So you want to make sure you're stirring. The next thing I'm going to add is my spinach. And you want to incorporate that spinach with a good stir. And you can hear that sound is the steam from the water that the spinach brought to the party. So get that all off the sides. When we used to make this at home as young children, it was almost like a special occasion rice in our house. We didn't make it all that often. So here comes big steam. You can hear that sound. And now what we want to do is get this to come up to a boil. Once it comes up to a boil, I'm going to let it simmer for about a moment. And then we're going to turn it, cover it, and let it literally steam for 20 minutes. And that's rice pilaf. That's as difficult as it gets. All right, so I'm going to cover it so that the heat stays in and let it come to a boil. We'll come back. Okay, let's take a look. We should be boiling, or at the very least simmering at this point, which we are. So I'm going to let that go for just a moment, about 10 to 20 seconds. And then we're going to just turn this off. What we're doing is allowing the steam to build up in here. So no more peeking after this. And we're going to turn it off and let it cook through. So once we do that, we're going to leave it off for 20 minutes. So set a timer, check it in 20 minutes. It should be perfectly done. So we'll come back in about 20 minutes. All right, our 20 minutes are up. Remember, we have not opened this lid on purpose because we want to keep the steam in there. You see all that steam come out? It's beautiful. All right, so we're gonna get our bowl. We're going to serve up our rice. And you can see I made a lot of rice. This doesn't last very long in this house. Okay, so we'll close this up so it stays warm. And we're gonna go ahead and finish this off. So if we come right over here, by the way, this is a serving bowl. This is not a serving for an individual. I'm going to put in the lemon juice. This is about the juice of a half a lemon for this amount. So overall, for the whole thing, you'll probably need the juice about 2 lemons, depending on the size. I've chopped up my feta. So I'm going to get my feta in there. All right, so I put some of it there. I'm going to toss it a little bit, because the feta now has been at room temperature, and it's going to get warmed up by the rice here. So every so often you're going to have a bite of feta cheese when you go through this, which I love. All right, so we'll add the rest of this here at the top. And then a little drizzle of olive oil. This isn't a requirement, but again, it's a mouthfeel thing. The fat makes it nice and slippery. It's delicious. So if you want to try something different, nice side dish to have in your repertoire is Spanakorizo, which you can make with fresh spinach, frozen spinach, chopped spinach, or leaf spinach. As long as you have some good quality feta, you can add that on. And if you don't have feta, you could use some Parmesan cheese. You just want something sharp and salty. So I hope you try this, because that is delicious.